Public Enemy has shown John Dillinger, the 3rd of March, 1934. Imagine this. A gangster so infamous that the FBI literally gave him a ranking. Not most wanted, not dangerous, but Public Enemy has shown. That title belonged to John Dillinger, a man who didn't just rob banks, he embarrassed prisons. Dillinger wasn't new to escaping. His first jailbreak happened in Ohio with help from 8 friends, proving that teamwork really does make the dream work, even if the dream is crime. After that humiliation, authorities decided they needed something stronger, tighter, and supposedly impossible to escape. Enter Lake County Jail in Crown Point, Indiana. Jail officials proudly described it as escape-proof. You can almost hear Dillinger laughing quietly in his cell. During his second capture, Dillinger studied the routine, the guards, and the confidence. Everyone was relaxed. No one expected anything dramatic. And that's exactly when Dillinger made his move. One day, he stepped out of his cell holding a gun. The guards froze. No alarms, no heroics, just instant cooperation. Dillinger calmly ordered them to open the doors. And they did. He walked out of the jail like a man late for an appointment. Here's the twist that turned this escape into legend. The gun wasn't real. According to popular belief, Dillinger carved a wooden gun, painted it black using shoe polish, and turned a piece of jailhouse arts and crafts into the most effective weapon in the room. No bullets. No metal. Just confidence and good acting. To this day, there's debate about how exactly the escape unfolded. But one thing is clear, the guards were fooled, and Dillinger was gone. Once free, Dillinger didn't slow down. Instead of lying low, he went right back to doing what he did best, robbing banks. Because apparently escaping jail wasn't thrilling enough on its own. For several months, he stayed on the run, adding more crimes to his already impressive rap sheet. His fame grew, newspapers followed his every move, and the FBI intensified the hunt. Dillinger had become more than a criminal, he was a headline. But legends don't run forever. In July 1934, just a few months after his fake gun escape, Dillinger's luck ran out. He was shot and killed in a gunfight with the FBI, bringing an end to one of the most embarrassing chapters in American prison history. Today, John Dillinger's escape remains famous not because of violence or force, but because a wooden gun, some shoe polish, and unbelievable confidence were enough to defeat an escape-proof jail. The Alcatraz Escape. The 11th of June 1962. Alcatraz was supposed to be the final stop. Not a prison, a full stop. An island surrounded by freezing water, strong currents, and sharks that the brochures probably forgot to mention. Guards loved to say one thing with confidence: no one escapes Alcatraz. History loves proving confident people wrong. By 1962, 3 inmates, Frank Lee Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin, had spent enough time inside the rock to realize something important. The prison was tough, but not perfect. And where there's a flaw, there's hope and a spoon. Yes, a spoon. Over months, the men patiently dug through a weakened concrete wall behind their cells using nothing more than a spoon. Not a power tool, not explosives. Just determination, patience, and very bored prisoners with a lot of time. But digging a hole is only half the problem. The bigger issue? What happens during nightly head counts? Their solution was genius and slightly terrifying. They created papier-mâché dummy heads, complete with real hair collected from the prison barbershop. These fake heads were placed in their beds, under blankets, perfectly positioned to look like 3 men enjoying a peaceful night's sleep. Guards walked by. Flashlight sweep. Everything looked normal. Spoiler, it wasn't. On the night of the 11th of June 1962, the 3 men slipped through their tunnels, climbed up through a ventilation shaft, and reached the prison roof. Waiting for them was another masterpiece of prison creativity. A homemade raft, stitched together from over 50 stolen raincoats. Yes, raincoats They inflated the raft, slipped into the icy water, and disappeared into the darkness of San Francisco Bay. The guards didn't notice a thing. It wasn't until the next morning when guards tried to wake the prisoners that the truth came out. The dummy heads rolled off the beds, and suddenly Alcatraz wasn't so escape-proof anymore. A massive search followed. Boats, helicopters, Coast Guard, the works. But here's where the story turns mysterious. The men were never found. Officially, the FBI and prison authorities concluded that the escapees drowned in the cold, violent waters. No bodies were recovered, but the assumption was simple. Survival was impossible. Except not everyone agrees. Over the years, rumors refused to die. Some believe the man survived and escaped to Brazil. In 2013, a letter surfaced claiming to be from John Anglin, stating that all three men survived and that he was still alive at age 83. The FBI tested it, but the results were inconclusive. Catch me if you can. Frank Abagnale, April 1971. Some criminals escape prison by force. Some dig tunnels. And then there's Frank Abagnale, who escaped using something far more dangerous, confidence. Frank's criminal career started young, very young. By the age of 15, he was already committing fraud, impersonating professionals, and fooling institutions that really should have known better. His life later inspired the movie Catch Me If You Can, but long before Hollywood showed up, Frank was already running circles around law enforcement. Frank escaped prison twice, and the first time was almost casual. While being deported back to the United States, Frank somehow managed to escape from a British airplane at JFK Airport. No explosions, no chaos. Just a quiet exit that left authorities asking themselves uncomfortable questions. Eventually, he was caught again in April 1971. This time, officials were sure they had him locked down properly. They did not. When Frank arrived at the prison, a small but critical mistake happened. A U.S. Marshal forgot to submit Frank's detention commitment papers. To most inmates, this would mean nothing. To Frank Abagnale, it meant opportunity. At that time, U.S. prisons were being inspected by federal officials over civil rights concerns. Frank noticed the tension, the paperwork, and the fear of failing an inspection. And that's when he decided to rewrite his role. Slowly, carefully, Frank began planting an idea in the guards' minds. What if he wasn't really a prisoner? What if he was actually an undercover federal inspector, posing as an inmate to secretly evaluate the prison? He didn't rush it. He didn't overact. He let the story grow naturally. Over several weeks, Frank built credibility. He spoke confidently, asked the right questions, and acted exactly like someone who belonged. To make the lie airtight, he even used an accomplice outside the prison to forge a fake FBI business card, officially identifying him as an agent. The guards were convinced. Instead of treating him like a criminal, they began giving him special treatment, hoping their cooperation would help the prison pass its inspection with flying colors. And then, one day, Frank did the unthinkable. He simply walked out of the prison. No chase. No alarms. No suspicion. The guards actually believed they had fooled him. Frank stayed on the run for 2 more months before being rearrested, but by then the damage was already done. The story leaked, spread, and turned Frank into a legend of criminal cleverness. Unlike most escape stories filled with violence or tools, Frank Abagnale proved something far more unsettling. Sometimes, the easiest way out of prison isn't through the walls. It's through people. And somewhere, a guard probably learned the hard way. Always check the paperwork. Nectarines are the key. Michel Vaujour, May 1986. Some prison escapes involve tunnels. Some involve helicopters. And then there's Michel Vaujour, who proved that sometimes fruit is the most dangerous weapon of all. In 1986, Michel Vaujour was sitting in a French prison, locked behind high walls, guarded towers, and security systems designed to stop exactly what he was planning to do. Most inmates would accept their fate. Michel, however, looked at the situation and thought, what if I escape using nectarines? Yes, nectarines. Michel wasn't working alone. His greatest advantage wasn't strength or tools, it was his wife, Nadine. While Michel was inside planning his escape, Nadine was outside doing something completely unexpected, taking helicopter lessons. That should have been the first red flag. Meanwhile, Michel was preparing his part of the plan. He took nectarines, carefully painted them to look like hand grenades, and turned innocent fruit into extremely convincing fake weapons. From a distance, they looked real enough to make anyone rethink their life choices. And that's exactly what happened. On the day of the escape, Michel used the fake grenades to threaten guards and force his way up to the roof of the prison. No explosions, no chaos. Just guards deciding that fruit-based violence was not worth testing. Once on the roof, Michel didn't run. He didn't climb. He waited. Moments later, a helicopter appeared in the sky like something straight out of an action movie. Piloting it was Nadine, who had trained specifically for this moment. She landed, picked Michel up from the roof, and the two flew away together. They landed in a football field, because apparently when you escape prison by helicopter, you don't worry too much about subtlety. For a brief moment, the plan worked perfectly. But freedom didn't last long. Nadine was caught and arrested for her role in the escape. Michel managed to stay free for a short time, but during a later robbery attempt, things went wrong. He was shot, but survived, proving that even after fruit-based deception and helicopter escapes, luck eventually runs out. Still, Michel's escape became legendary not because of violence or destruction, but because of creativity. Turning nectarines into fake grenades wasn't just clever, it was bold enough to confuse trained prison staff. One can't help but admire the craftsmanship. Those nectarines must have looked very convincing. Honestly, if prison escapes didn't work out, Michel probably missed his true calling as an artist. In the end, this escape proved one important lesson. Never underestimate desperation, teamwork, or the power of well-painted fruit. The Magic Key, the 10th of January 1995. If movies have taught us anything, it's that prison escapes usually involve explosions, chaos, and dramatic music. But in January 1995, 3 inmates in the UK proved that sometimes the most powerful tool in a prison isn't strength or violence. It's memory. The men were Andrew Roger, Keith Rose, and Matthew Williams, inmates who worked inside the prison's sheet metal shop. Unlike most prisoners, they had access to tools, materials, and most importantly time. And they used all 3 very wisely. At some point, the men noticed something interesting, a guard's master key. This wasn't just any key. It was the kind that could open nearly every door in the prison. One look was all they needed. They didn't steal it, they didn't photograph it, they didn't trace it on paper, they memorized it. Every curve, every groove, every detail. Later, back in the metal shop, they recreated the key purely from memory. No blueprint, no reference, just teamwork and an excellent attention to detail. The result? A perfect replica that could unlock the prison like it was their own house. But they didn't stop there. The trio also secretly built a 25-foot steel ladder and even constructed a homemade gun, just in case persuasion was needed. This wasn't a rushed escape, it was a carefully engineered operation. When the night came, the plan unfolded smoothly. With their fake master key, doors opened silently, one after another. No alarms, no shouting, no panic. Just 3 men moving through a prison that was never meant to cooperate with them. And then, they were gone. For a brief time, the escape worked. Authorities were stunned. A prison defeated not by force, but by patience and precision. Unfortunately for the escapees, freedom was short-lived. 4 days later, the trio was caught while attempting to plan the theft of an airplane. Because apparently escaping prison successfully wasn't ambitious enough. Their recapture didn't erase what they had done. The story spread quickly, leaving officials embarrassed and security experts uncomfortable.